Hello, travelers. Professor GreyTail here. I know that you have already learned much about our magical world, where good and evil intertwine their wands in an eternal dance. But I am certain I can still surprise you. Night had settled softly over London, wrapping the Muggle and Wizarding worlds alike in a blanket of quiet. Yet within the high windows of the Auror office, a single lamp still burned. Its glow spilled across scattered case files, half-drunk tea, and the tired but steady gaze of Harry Potter. He had grown accustomed to late hours since becoming an Auror, though this evening carried a tension that felt different, quicker, sharper, like a storm that had not yet chosen its direction. 3 attacks in Diagon Alley, all within a fortnight, and not one clue solid enough to grasp. The Ministry muttered about dark wizards resurfacing, but Harry sensed something stranger beneath the surface, a puzzle with pieces that refused to settle. The victims, ordinary shopkeepers and one retired healer, had offered little more than a single unsettling detail. The hooded figure had pointed a wand, released a pulse of shimmering light, and whispered the same cryptic phrase, "Not yet." No one had been seriously harmed, but magic of that precision was far from the work of a common troublemaker. Harry rubbed the bridge of his nose. He knew the danger of underestimating patterns like these. Shadows had a habit of lengthening if left alone. A soft knock broke through his thoughts. Ron stepped inside, his red hair catching the lamplight. "Still on this case?" he asked, though the answer was obvious. Harry nodded. Ron dropped into the chair opposite him. "I checked with the victims again. None of them recognized the attacker's voice. Whoever it is, they're careful." "Too careful," Harry murmured. "No theft, no message, no purpose except that strange phrase." Ron leaned forward. "Could be a warning." Harry shook his head. "Or a countdown." Silence settled briefly between them, accompanied by the ticking of the wall clock. Outside, wind brushed against the windows, carrying the cool breath of approaching autumn. A file lay open before Harry. The most recent attack, a wandmaker's apprentice who insisted that the spell felt like a harmless siphon, a charm that drew magic without leaving a physical mark. But siphons were restricted magic, rarely taught and nearly forgotten. Harry had seen something like it only once, in an old training manual buried deep in the Ministry archives. He pushed the memory aside. There would be time for that later. Just as he reached for his quill, the fireplace roared to life in a burst of green flame. Harry and Ron rose instantly, wands drawn, but the spinning ember light resolved into the familiar figure of a harried young wizard from the Department of Magical Law Enforcement. "Potter!" he gasped, stumbling into the room. "Another attack just happened, right in front of Flourish and Blots." Harry's heart tightened. "Injuries?" "No, same as the others. But this time, the attacker left something behind." Ron exchanged a quick glance with Harry. What sort of something? The messenger swallowed, producing a small folded scrap of parchment. "It has your name on it." Harry took the parchment, feeling the dry crackle beneath his fingertips. The words were scrawled in uneven strokes, as though written in haste. "Your past holds the key." Ron exhaled sharply. "Well, that's not ominous at all." But Harry didn't speak. A pressure, old and unwelcome, settled against his ribs, the feeling of being drawn into a story whose ending he could not yet see. The messenger shifted nervously. "The minister asked for you to head to the scene immediately. They've sealed the alley." Harry folded the note and slipped it into his pocket. "Right, Ron, with me." As they moved toward the fireplace, Harry cast one last look at the lamplit desk. Hours earlier, the case had felt puzzling but contained. Now it had shifted, become personal in a way he had not anticipated. He stepped into the emerald flames, spoke the destination, and vanished in a swirl of green light. On the other side awaited a darkened alley, a circle of anxious ministry workers, and the echo of a stranger's whisper threading through the air, like a riddle not yet spoken. The green flames released Harry into the cool night air of Diagon Alley, where lanterns flickered uncertainly, casting long, wavering shadows across shuttered shops. A cordon of Aurors and ministry officials formed a protective ring around the cobblestone walkway before Flourish and Blots, their breaths misting faintly, as though the magic lingering in the air had chilled it. The crowd parted at Harry's approach, and murmurs rose like rustling parchment. Ron stepped out beside him, wand already drawn. "Same feeling as the last attacks," he muttered, like the air hasn't decided what to do with itself. Harry understood. The street felt tense, as though the magic used only moments ago still trembled between the stones. A young witch named Maris, an Auror trainee Harry had been mentoring, hurried over. "Sir, thank Merlin you're here. We've preserved the traces exactly as we found them. The victim's stable, just shaken." Harry nodded. "Show me." Maris led them toward a weathered bench just outside the bookshop, where a middle-aged wizard sat wrapped in a blanket. He blinked rapidly, as if struggling to steady his thoughts. Harry crouched before him. "Tell me what happened." The man swallowed. "I'd just closed for the evening. Then this figure stepped out of the shadows, wand raised. There wasn't time to react. A pale light, like mist but heavier, hit me square in the chest. I didn't feel pain, just numbness." Then he leaned close and whispered those words. "Same as the others." Ron exhaled softly. "Not yet." "Yes," the man replied, but this time he left something, dropped it on the ground before he vanished. Maris handed Harry a small rune-etched coin sealed inside a charm bubble. Its metal gleamed faintly, humming with dormant magic. The symbol carved into its surface resembled two crescents locking together, an old defensive marking Harry had seen only once in a battered training text describing lost protective magics from the days when Hogwarts founders still walked its halls. Ron frowned. "You recognize it?" "Only barely," Harry said. "But I know it doesn't belong in modern spell work." Before he could examine it further, a sudden shimmer in the air caught his eye, a faint spiral of hovering particles right where the attack had occurred. Harry stepped toward it, lifting his wand. The remnants of the spell drifted like dust in moonlight. With a gentle swirl, he gathered the particles into a visible plume. Maris leaned in. "It looks like a siphon spell, but the color's wrong." "Because it isn't a proper siphon," Harry murmured. "It's a variation, and whoever cast it knows exactly what they're doing." Ron studied the floating magic with narrowed eyes. "Why these people? They're not connected to anything." Harry considered the parchment now folded in his pocket. "Your past holds the key." The words seemed to weigh more heavily with each passing moment. "We're missing a thread," he said quietly. "Something tying all this together." A rustling behind them drew their attention as a senior investigator approached, his robe hem brushing the cobbles. "Potter, we've completed the sweep. No footprints beyond the victims, no wand fragments, no magical residue except what you're holding now. Whoever this attacker is, they're skilled and extremely deliberate." Harry dismissed the plume of spell residue, letting it drift into the containment vial Maris offered. Let's reset the warding around the alley. No one comes in or out until sunrise unless cleared by the ministry. As orders spread through the team, Harry stepped away from the bustle, allowing his gaze to travel the quiet stretch of street. Lantern light glimmered faintly against darkened windows, and the hush of night pressed close, carrying only the soft rustle of cloaks and distant murmurs of wind. Ron came to stand beside him. "What are you thinking?" "That this isn't a warning," Harry said. "It's preparation." Ron frowned. "Preparation for what?" "I don't know. But the attacker's gathering something. Magical signatures, traces of personal magic. Whoever they target isn't random. There's meaning behind it." Ron rubbed his jaw. "You think it's tied to the Order? To us?" Harry didn't answer immediately. The note's message pulsed through his thoughts like a heartbeat. Before he could speak, a sudden crack of apparition echoed at the end of the alley. Several Aurors raised their wands at once, only to lower them when an elderly wizard in ministry robes hurried forward, breathless. "Potter! We've received a report from Nocturne Alley. Someone was seen placing these..." He held out a small sack. Inside lay 3 more rune-marked coins identical to the one from the attack. Hidden beneath shop doors. No one saw the culprit's face, but they vanished moments before you arrived here. Harry stepped closer. "The same markings?" "Exactly the same." Ron's expression hardened. "So now they're planting clues?" "Or markers," Harry replied. His voice lowered. "Markers for something yet to come." The night wind stirred again, scattering a faint swirl of fallen parchment from a nearby stall. Harry watched the scraps drift across the stones like pale leaves, then turned to the assembled Aurors. "We divide into teams. Secure Nocturne Alley. Retrieve every coin you find, and no one touches them without containment spells." As the teams dispersed into the shadows, Harry stood still for a moment, listening to the quiet pulse of the alley around him. 3 attacks, now coins scattered like a trail, or a net being woven. Whatever tale was unfolding, Harry felt its threads tangling around him now, drawing him deeper with each step. He straightened, his wand steady in his hand. The attacker had begun their game, and Harry Potter, Auror of the Ministry of Magic, would follow the trail into the darkness until the truth revealed itself, no matter where the path led. Auror boots echoed upon the stones of Nocturne Alley, their steps weaving through the narrow, crooked passages where lanterns burned with a wary glow. Though the night held its breath, the alley's old timbers creaked as though whispering secrets long withheld. Harry stepped forward at the head of the search, Ron close beside him, while Maris and 2 others fanned out toward the darker bends. The air here felt heavier than in Diagon Alley, clinging like damp cloth against Harry's skin. Shops leaned inward, crooked signs dangling by rusted chains, and shadows pooled thickly beneath windows. Yet even in such a place, something about the night felt wrong in a new way, more focused, more deliberate, as if the shadows themselves awaited instruction. Ron spotted the first coin half hidden beneath the chipped door of a shuttered apothecary. "There," he murmured. Harry knelt, lifting the rune-marked piece with his wand and guiding it into a containment crystal. It gleamed with the same silent hum as the others, the ancient crescents etched sharply across its face. He whispered, "Whoever placed these is walking paths they know well." As they pressed deeper into the alley, the narrow lanes curled like the coils of a sleeping serpent. Another coin lay beneath a boarded-up wand repair shop, then another beneath the crooked eaves of a tarnished robe seller. Each seemed positioned with care, forming lines that Harry suspected would map into some unseen pattern. The team paused at a crossroads, where 4 alleys converged into a tight square of dim torchlight. The final coin sat at its heart, as if claiming the place. Ron stepped beside him. Almost looks like a ritual circle. Harry surveyed the streets, tracing the rough shape in his mind. A circle, or a compass, a way of directing magic once the last piece is set. Maris emerged from the shadows, breath quick. "Sir, no sign of the culprit, but a shopkeeper swears he heard chanting earlier. Said it sounded like someone testing spells beneath the alley floor." Harry's attention sharpened. "Beneath?" She nodded. "There's an old access hatch behind the apothecary. Leads to the unused cellars under this square." Ron let out a low whistle. Perfect place for hiding things you don't want seen. Harry moved swiftly, Maris guiding them to the hatch. Rusty hinges groaned as he eased it open. A cool draft rose up from the darkness below, carrying a faint scent of old stone and something else, something sharp, metallic, like magic coaxed too close to breaking. Wandlight flared as the group descended into a narrow stair spiraling deep beneath the street. The air grew colder, the quiet settling into a steady hum like distant breathing. The steps ended at a long tunnel, lined with arches carved from ancient rock. Dust shimmered beneath Harry's wand, and faint, half-formed runes glowed along the floor as though awakened by their arrival. Ron frowned. These runes, they're old, very old. Harry crouched to inspect them. Same crescent shape, same spell family. Someone's been drawing from lost magic. A soft pulse of light flickered at the tunnel's end. Cautiously, Harry led them forward. The passage opened into a chamber carved into a circle, its ceiling low, its walls lined with shelves cluttered by broken ward stones and discarded scrolls. The center, however, held Harry's attention. There, etched into the floor with painstaking care, sprawled a vast pattern of crescents, spirals, and intersecting lines. The stolen coins likely formed part of this design once arranged correctly. Ron whispered, "This is no random attack. Someone's trying to build something." Harry stepped into the circle, wand raised. At its core lay a pedestal, upon which rested a small locked journal, worn and battered as though carried for years. Dust motes glimmered around it like tiny suspended stars. Harry gently lifted the book. A weak ward, meant more to warn than defend, sparked against his fingers. He opened the cover. Inside lay pages filled with frantic handwriting, sketches of magical symbols, and notes referencing spells Harry had never seen taught in his years at Hogwarts. One line had been circled repeatedly, ink blotting at its edges. To prevent the Dark Protector's rise, one must gather the traces of those who shaped the old war. Ron leaned closer. Dark Protector? Never heard of that. Harry turned a page. More notes detailed magical extractions, not for harm, but for analysis. The victims' magical signatures were listed methodically, each paired with a location in the runic circle etched on the chamber floor. Maris whispered, "So the attacker thinks he's collecting pieces of some prophecy? Or trying to force one into being," Harry murmured. Because another line appeared just below, its ink shaking with haste. "The chosen one's trace will complete the circle." Ron whistled sharply. "Brilliant. Now it makes sense why he left you a message." Harry closed the journal slowly, unease coiling in his chest. This was not the work of a Death Eater remnant or a vengeful wanderer. Whoever had done this believed wholeheartedly in the prophecy they sought to stop, believed enough to twist forbidden magics into a purpose all their own. A faint sound echoed from deeper within the chamber. A shuffle, a breath, the scrape of a boot against stone. Harry raised his wand. "Someone's here." The shadows beyond the runic circle trembled. Then, with a quiet rustle, a figure slipped away into a branching tunnel, footsteps swift and desperate. "After him," Harry commanded. They broke into a run, their wand lights flashing along the ancient walls. Dust rose behind the fleeing shadow, a trail through the winding dark. The tunnel bent sharply, then again, until the path forked like the branching roots of an old tree. Harry halted at the divide. The air shimmered faintly. A spell, freshly cast, drifted across the stone like a fading echo. Ron cursed under his breath. He used a diversion charm. Maris peered into the gloom. "Which path?" Harry listened to the silence. One side breathed cool air, old and untouched. The other carried a whisper of magic, thin as spider silk, tugging lightly at the edge of his senses. He pointed left. "That way. He's masking his steps, but not completely." They charged on, the tunnel tightening until it spat them into another chamber. This one smaller, filled with crates of unused ward stones and discarded potion bottles. A single lantern burned low in the far corner, but the room was empty. Ron kicked a crate. We were close. Harry's wand swept over the walls. Faint sparks glimmered where a spell had been cast moments ago. Something soft, almost elegant. "A disapparition," Maris said quietly. "He escaped." Harry lowered his wand. The chamber lay still around them, save for the trembling lantern flame. The attacker had fled, but not without leaving his intentions carved into the stones of the underground. And now Harry knew the truth. The stranger was not just gathering magic. He was preparing for Harry himself. The path ahead had sharpened, the darkness gathering shape. Whatever tale the attacker believed, he meant to finish it. And Harry would need to unravel the prophecy's false threads before they drew the world into a storm of misplaced fear. They began the ascent back toward the alley, footsteps echoing behind them. Yet Harry felt the story deepening, its currents shifting as though the night itself was turning a page. The chase had begun in earnest, and somewhere in the quiet dark beneath London, a misguided wizard prepared the next move, convinced he was protecting the world from a threat that did not exist. Dawn rose pale and uncertain over London, its first light threading through the windows of the Auror office like timid fingers. Yet Harry had not slept, nor had Ron, who sat slumped in a chair with a quill tucked behind one ear and a cup of now-cold tea forgotten at his elbow. The night's discoveries had cast long shadows over their thoughts, and those shadows clung stubbornly, even as morning came. Harry stood beside the large operations table, the journal they had recovered lying open before him. Its pages seemed to pulse with a quiet urgency, filled with cramped notes, feverish diagrams, and fragments of a prophecy that had never been recorded in the Hall of Prophecies. A false vision, perhaps, or a misguided interpretation, but the attacker believed in it with dangerous conviction. Ron rubbed his eyes. Whoever wrote that journal wasn't just dabbling. This is years of work. Obsession, really. Harry nodded. He thinks he's preventing some terrible future, and that makes him more unpredictable than any dark wizard seeking power. Before Ron could respond, Maris arrived with a stack of reports. She placed them on the table, breathing hard. "Sir, we finished tracing the magical residues from the runic chamber. They match the signatures of all 3 victims from Diagon Alley. No darker traces, no signs of coercion or possession." Ron frowned. "So he's acting entirely on his own." "It seems so," Maris said. "But there's more. We analyzed the coins. The runes etched into them form a sequence, one that channels magical signatures into a central point. Once activated, the pattern could allow the caster to reveal something. Harry turned sharply. Reveal what? Maris hesitated. We're not certain, but based on the runes, perhaps a vision. A projection of magical resonance gathered from the victims, something like a map of power or lineage. Ron leaned back. Brilliant. So he's trying to see the future by forcing magic to paint a picture for him? Harry closed the journal, his jaw tightening. Or confirm a prophecy he already believes in. The air in the office grew heavier, as though the case itself had exhaled a long sigh. Harry felt a familiar ache in his chest, the weight of responsibility, of knowing that even a misguided wizard could cause catastrophe if he meddled with unstable magic. The door burst open suddenly, and a frantic clerk hurried in, clutching a scroll. Urgent message from St. Mungo's. One of the victims, the wandmaker's apprentice, woke moments ago with new information. Harry took the scroll at once and read quickly. His eyes narrowed. Ron rose. What is it? He said the attacker used his own wand, Harry murmured. A ministry-issued wand, not stolen, registered, and he remembers part of the man's voice, young, nervous but determined. He kept muttering something about the cycle returning. Maris inhaled sharply. Sir, a ministry wand? Harry's gaze hardened. The attacker is one of our own. Silence rippled through the office like a sudden cold wind. Ron let out a slow breath. We've got dozens of young curse-breakers, wordsmiths, even archivists who trained with old magic texts. It could be any of them. Harry nodded grimly, and he would know our patterns, our search methods, our wards. Before despair could settle its claws, Harry's eyes drifted back to the journal on the table. One name appeared again and again in its margins. References to notes copied from an old defensive magic archive, written decades earlier by a Hogwarts professor long deceased. Whoever had written this journal had access to records sealed away from the public. He turned to Maris. Make a list of every ministry employee who's requested access to restricted magical archives in the past year. Cross-reference with those assigned to prophecy research, curse-breaking, and ancient defense studies. Maris nodded. At once. Hours passed in steady, precise work. The office filled with a hum of reports, parchment shuffling, and the soft glow of magical charts being conjured. As names were eliminated, the list grew smaller, until at last only 3 remained. Ron tapped the parchment. 3 wizards who fit the profile. But look, this one here, Caelan Thorne, entry-level cursebreaker, recently applied twice for permission to study lost defensive magic, denied both times. Harry read further. The notes detailed a spotless record, but also a troubling line. Family lost during the Second Wizarding War. Persistent interest in prophecies relating to dark forces. Ron shook his head. Sounds like the type to chase shadows until they turn into monsters. Harry folded the parchment. Then we begin with him. They set off at once, apparating to a narrow lane just outside the ministry dormitories where many young employees lived. The morning sunlight spilled across cobbled paths, lined with ancient oak trees whose branches rustled like voices lost in thought. Caelan Thorne's residence stood at the lane's end, a modest stone cottage with ivy crawling up its walls. A faint tingle met Harry's magic before he even touched the gate. Ron sensed it too. Wards, he murmured. Strong ones. Harry raised his wand and whispered a revealing charm. The air shimmered, unveiling a lattice of intricate runes woven across the doorframe, glowing softly with crescents and spirals, the same symbols from the coins and the underground chamber. He's been practicing, Harry said. They stepped forward cautiously. Harry pressed his hand to the door. To his surprise, it swung inward, unlocked. Inside, the cottage lay silent. Sunlight filtered through dusty windows, illuminating stacks of parchment, scattered books, and half-finished rune carvings left upon the table. The air carried the faint hum of magic still active, as though someone had departed only moments before. Ron walked the perimeter, wand raised. He left quickly. Look at this. Traveling cloak missing, potion vials gone, notebooks removed. Harry moved toward the center table, where a lone parchment lay unrolled, weighted by a small stone. Upon it was scrawled a message, hurried yet unmistakable. I am not the enemy. I only seek to stop what you cannot see. Ron exhaled. He knew he'd come. Harry's gaze drifted across the room and then froze. Another sheet of parchment lay half hidden beneath an open book. He lifted it slowly. A map of London, and upon it, 6 runic markers drawn in a circle. At its center was a single word: tonight. A chill settled along Harry's spine. He's finishing the ritual. Ron's grip on his wand tightened. Where? Harry held up the map, the markers aligned like points of a star, all converging toward one place. The old river Undercroft beneath the Thames, he whispered. An abandoned sanctuary once used by ancient spellwrights. He means to complete the circle there. Ron straightened. Then we still have time. But Harry felt the weight of the moment pressing like stone. Time was thinning, stretching to its final thread. And Caelan Thorne, misguided, determined, and armed with dangerous magic, was stepping toward a destiny he believed was righteous. Harry turned from the cottage, cloak sweeping behind him like a herald of the storm to come. The tale had sharpened. The hour had begun, and the river's dark Undercroft awaited, holding secrets ready to stir beneath its ancient stones. Evening descended swiftly upon the city, drawing a veil of silver dusk across the rooftops and the winding ribbon of the Thames. Beneath that ancient river, older still than the Ministry itself, stretched the Undercroft, an abandoned lattice of stone chambers, sealed tunnels, and forgotten sanctuaries where magic once ran thick as the current above. It was there that Caelan Thorne had chosen to finish his work, and it was there Harry now made his way. Harry, Ron, and Maris stood upon the worn embankment where a concealed stairway descended into the depths. The entrance lay hidden behind layers of illusion that dissolved only at Harry's command. A gust of cold, river-scented air swept upward from the unveiled stair, brushing Harry's cloak like the touch of an unseen hand. Ron peered into the gloom. Looks welcoming. Maris steadied her wand. The readings are unstable. I can feel the magic quivering from here. Harry nodded. He's already begun. They descended. Stone walls pressed close around them, carved long ago by spellwrights who shaped the Undercroft as a refuge for magical gatherings. Their steps echoed through the spiraling passageway, and faint glimmers of ancient runes flickered to life beneath their boots, awakening at the presence of living magic. The deeper they traveled, the colder the air became, until every breath hung like mist. Finally, the stair ended in a vast chamber whose ceiling arched so high it faded into shadow. Pillars lined the walls, entwined with carvings of serpents and flowing water. But it was the center of the chamber that drew the eye. There, upon a raised dais, Caelan Thorne had begun to shape his circle. 6 coins hovered in the air, arranged with careful precision. Their crescents glowed with soft silver fire, each pulsing in rhythm with the next. Thin strands of magic arced between them, weaving a web of luminous threads that twisted like a constellation being rewritten. The 7th place, empty still, awaited the final signature. Harry's. Caelan stood before the circle, his back to them. His cloak rippled in the energy of the spell, and his wand traced slow, deliberate patterns through the air. Each movement sent a ripple across the chamber, the stone beneath their feet vibrating faintly. Maris whispered, "He's stabilizing a resonance field." "If he finishes it, it could collapse," Harry said, "or unleash something he cannot control." Ron stepped forward. "Oi, Kaelin!" The young wizard stiffened, his wand freezing mid-air. Slowly he turned. Kaelin Thorne's face was gaunt, his eyes shadowed by sleepless nights, yet burning with fierce conviction. A strand of pale hair fell across his brow as he regarded them, not with hostility, but with weary resolve. "So you found me," he said softly. His voice was calm, almost sorrowful. "I knew you would, Harry Potter." Harry held his wand low but steady. "Stop this, Kaelin. The magic you're using is unstable. You're risking more than you understand." Kaelin shook his head. "You don't see the danger I've seen. You, who lived through the darkest war of our age. You should understand better than anyone. The cycle always returns. Darkness gathers, and one figure rises to shield it, a protector born not of evil, but of imbalance." Ron frowned. "This dark protector? You think it's real? Some prophecy no one's ever heard of?" "I have read it," Kaelin insisted, voice trembling with fervor. "A fragment, forgotten, dismissed as an old seer's ramblings. But I found proof, patterns in the old magics, echoes of past wars. And then I discovered that those touched by the last great conflict leave traces that can be read, mapped, understood." Harry stepped closer. "So you attacked innocent people?" "I did not harm them," Kaelin replied quickly. "I took only what was needed: magic, essence, resonance, a glimpse of the paths they once walked. Each trace brought me closer to the truth, and all of it points to a single answer." His gaze locked on Harry. "You, the one who survived death itself, the one around whom war always turns. Your signature will complete the circle. Then I will see what approaches, what shadow gathers beyond sight, and I will stop it before it begins." A deep hum rolled across the chamber, shaking dust from the ancient pillars. The 6 coins brightened, threads between them tightening like a net. Harry felt the air thinning. "Kaelin, listen to me. Prophecies don't dictate the future. They show possibilities. If you force magic to reveal what isn't meant to be read, you could tear the veil that protects us from chaos." Kaelin raised his wand. "I have no choice." "You do," Harry said firmly. "You always have a choice." The chamber trembled. A crack split across the dais, and a gust of magical pressure burst outward like a sudden wind from the depths of the river. The coins pulsed wildly, their crescents flickering. Kaelin's eyes widened in alarm. No, it's too soon." The magic surged. Harry darted forward as the first coin broke from its orbit, spinning out of control. Ron and Maris raised shields to contain the bursts of erratic energy. Kaelin struggled to restore the pattern, but the threads were unraveling faster than he could weave them. "Kaelin, stop the spell!" Harry shouted. "I can't!" Kaelin cried. "It's awakened. It's trying to complete itself." A second coin shuddered violently, releasing a burst of pale light that struck the chamber wall with thunderous force. Stone cracked. Dust rained from the ceiling. The resonance field twisted, collapsing inward like a storm devouring itself. Kaelin staggered, clutching his wand. "I only wanted to prevent another war." Harry reached him just as the final coin flared with blinding brilliance. He seized Kaelin's arm. "Then let me help you," Harry said, voice steady despite the chaos. "End the spell. Together." For a heartbeat, Kaelin stared at him, lost, desperate, afraid. Then he nodded. Harry lifted his wand. Kaelin mirrored him, Side by side, they struck the circle with a counter-resonance charm. Light exploded outward, threads snapped, coins shattered like glass made of moonlight. The dais split fully, and a rush of cold air roared through the chamber as the spell collapsed into silence. Then all was still. Only the fading glow of fractured runes lingered, trembling like embers before dusk snuffs their fire. Kalen sank to his knees, trembling. I didn't mean for this. I thought I was saving us. Harry knelt beside him. Fear twists even the noblest intentions. But none of this has to end in ruin. Ron stepped forward, breath heaving. We'll sort the rest out at the ministry. You're not alone, Kalen, but you can't walk this path again. Kalen bowed his head, weary and defeated. Above them, the river groaned against the ancient stones, as though the Thames itself exhaled in relief now that the circle had been broken. Harry stood slowly, the chamber dim around him. The ritual was ended, but the tale was not yet done. The hours that followed felt long and heavy, weighted with the stillness that settles after a storm has broken. The Undercroft, once trembling with unstable magic, lay quiet now, its runes dimmed, its echoes tamed. Aurors arrived through waves of green flame, filling the ancient chamber with urgent footsteps and low murmurs. Kalen Thorne, weary and defeated, did not resist when they led him gently toward the stairway that wound back to the surface. Harry watched him go. The young wizard's shoulders bowed beneath the burden of his own choices. Ron stood nearby, brushing dust from his cloak and muttering faintly about the state of the ceiling. Maris finished sealing the remnants of the shattered coins into containment crystals, each pulsing with a faint residue of what once had been. Yet even with Kalen disarmed, the chamber felt unsettled. Harry sensed it in the quiet, the lingering pulse of magic that had been roused, the faint whisper of threads not fully woven. When the last Auror departed, Harry lingered a moment longer. He glanced at the shattered fragments scattered across the dais, tiny shards gleaming like fallen stars. Ron stepped beside him. "You're thinking it isn't over," he said. Harry shook his head slowly. "Magic like this, it leaves echoes. Not dangerous ones, but echoes nonetheless. Kalen didn't weave a prophecy, but he awakened something the old spellwrights worked hard to bury." Ron blew out a breath. "Well, let's hope those echoes behave. I don't fancy coming back down here every week to clean up." Despite the heaviness of the moment, Harry smiled faintly. "Come on, the minister will want answers." They ascended the spiraling stair, the sound of their steps swallowed by the ancient stone. When they emerged at last into the cool night air, the river flowed steadily beside them, its dark water glinting beneath lantern light. The world above seemed calm, untouched by the turmoil beneath its surface. Yet the ministry was far from calm. Word of the incident had spread quickly. By the time Harry reached the atrium, whispers darted between employees like startled birds taking flight. Several nodded respectfully as he passed, though their eyes held questions they dared not ask aloud. In the minister's office, a cluster of officials gathered around a wide table covered in reports. The minister herself, a stern witch with hair like winter frost, looked up with a mixture of relief and gravity. "Potter, we've reviewed initial accounts from the scene. Kalen Thorne is in custody and awaiting formal questioning, but there is one matter that concerns us greatly." She gestured to a parchment displaying fragments of Kalen's journal. The scribbled lines, jagged and erratic, spoke of prophecy, rising shadows, and the believed necessity of preventing a new war. One advisor spoke grimly. This young man built an entire belief around a prophecy no one can verify. We need to understand how he gained access to restricted texts and how he operated unnoticed for so long. Harry nodded. He worked alone. His intentions were misguided, but he wasn't driven by malice. He thought he was protecting the wizarding world from a threat that existed only in misinterpreted visions. The minister exhaled, and yet he nearly unleashed a magical collapse in the Undercroft. Ron stepped forward, but he didn't. Harry stopped it, and Kaelin didn't want anyone harmed. That may be so, she allowed, but the ministry must ensure this never happens again. Harry glanced at the parchment once more. Where is Kaelin now? In a secure ward, the minister replied. He's calm, cooperative even, but disturbed by the collapse of his ritual. He insists he was close to revealing something important. Harry felt a tightness in his chest, sympathy perhaps, or the weight of witnessing another young wizard swallowed by fear and doubt. After the meeting concluded, Harry made his way to the secure ward where Kaelin was held. A pair of Aurors opened the door, and Harry stepped inside. Kaelin sat on a low bench, hands folded loosely before him. His wand had been removed, yet he did not appear broken, only lost, as though standing at the edge of a path he could no longer see. When he looked up, his voice was soft. "You came." Harry moved closer. "I wanted to hear your side, not your ritual, not your notes, just the truth." Kaelin's eyes darkened with resignation. "The truth is, I was afraid. I lost my family in the last war, not all at once, piece by piece, taken by events no one could foresee. I thought, if I understood the pattern, if I saw it coming, I could save others." Harry listened quietly, the words stirring memories of his own battles, of choices made under far heavier shadows. "You're not the only one who's been afraid," Harry said gently. "Fear belongs to all of us. But magic, especially the old magic, you cannot force it to speak. And if you try, it twists into something unrecognizable." Kaelin lowered his gaze. "So everything I saw, everything I believed, it was wrong?" Harry shook his head. "Not wrong, just misled. Prophecies don't guide us. They warn us sometimes, but our choices are what shape the world, not the visions in an old book." Kaelin swallowed hard, tears forming at the corner of his eyes. "I didn't want to become a threat." "You didn't," Harry said softly. "You lost your way, but you can find it again. You'll face consequences, but you won't face them alone." There was silence, deep as the Undercroft itself. Kaelin whispered, "Thank you, Harry Potter." Harry placed a hand briefly upon his shoulder, then stepped back. Duty called him onward, yet he carried with him the weight of that brief, fragile moment, a reminder that even misguided hearts could seek light instead of shadow. When he returned to the corridor, Ron waited there, arms crossed. "Well?" Ron asked. "He's not dangerous anymore," Harry said. "Just lost." Ron nodded. "Aren't we all, now and then?" They walked down the corridor side by side. Outside the tall windows, dawn's first pale rays broke across the sky once more. Another morning, another page turned. Though the ritual had been broken and the danger past, Harry felt the story's threads still shifting, weaving quietly in the spaces between shadow and light. For now, at least, peace held. But peace, like prophecy, was ever fragile, kept alive only by those who chose to defend it. Though the danger had passed, the ministry did not rest easily in the days that followed. Rumors spread like drifting ash. Whispers of forbidden rituals, unstable magics, and prophecies half remembered in dusty halls. Yet beneath all this murmur, Harry sensed a deeper unease settling across the wizarding world, a tremor too slight for most to feel, but unmistakable to those who had lived through war. Harry spent long hours in the Auror office reviewing Kaelin's writings, tracing each line again and again. Most of the fragments were tangled illusions of meaning, a young wizard's mind trying to shape chaos into truth. But there were a few passages that pricked Harry's sense of caution. Not because they foretold anything real, but because they reflected a pattern of fear that could spread if left unchallenged. On the third morning after the Undercroft incident, Harry entered the office to find Maris waiting beside his desk. Her expression, though composed, held a tautness Harry recognized. "Sir," she said quietly, "we received word from the Department of Mysteries. They'd like you to come at once." Harry paused mid-step. Very little ever prompted a summons from that shadowed wing of the ministry. Ron, who had arrived minutes earlier and was now attempting to charm his tea hotter, looked up. "Blimey, what do they want with you?" Maris hesitated. "They said it concerns the echoes left in the Undercroft." Harry's brow furrowed. "Echoes?" She nodded. "Residual magic often fades on its own, but in this case, it seems something lingered." Harry exchanged a glance with Ron. The ritual had collapsed, yes, but magic that ancient did not always vanish cleanly. "I'll go," Harry said, reaching for his cloak. "Ron, hold down the office." Ron saluted with exaggerated solemnity. "If paperwork swallows me alive, tell Hermione I died bravely." Harry managed a faint smile and left. The corridors leading to the Department of Mysteries were quiet, lit by soft blue flames that cast shadows like drifting wisps. A robed attendant guided Harry through the silver doors and down a winding hall that smelled faintly of ancient parchment and spell dust. At last they reached a circular chamber whose ceiling rose high and vanished into darkness. A pair of unspeakables waited beside a floating crystal sphere, its surface swirling with faint light. One spoke. "Auror Potter, thank you for coming." Harry inclined his head. "You said this concerned the Undercroft?" "Yes," the unspeakable replied. "When your team stabilized the site, our sensors detected an unusual residue, neither dangerous nor active, but resonant. We retrieved it." The second unspeakable gestured toward the sphere. Within its depths, something flickered, soft as candlelight, shifting like a memory glimpsed from afar. Harry stepped closer. "What is it?" "An imprint," the unspeakable said. "A remnant of the ritual's collapse. When Thorn attempted to force the runes to reveal a prophecy, they instead recorded a fragment of emotional resonance. Not images, not words, but intention." Harry frowned. "Intention?" "Yes." The room echoed the strongest emotion present at the spell's unraveling. Normally such remnants dissipate quickly, but this one clung to a shape. Harry peered deeper. The flicker within the sphere grew clearer, not forming a picture, but a sensation he felt rather than saw. A pull, like a heartbeat echoing through stone. A sense of urgency, of something reaching forward. He whispered, "What is it trying to show?" "We cannot interpret it fully," the unspeakable replied, "but it seems to reflect not Kaelin Thorne's intention, but yours." Harry stiffened. The sphere glowed faintly brighter, as though reacting to his presence. "Mine?" The first unspeakable nodded. "When you counteracted the ritual, you did so with purpose. The magic captured that purpose and shaped this echo around it. We believe it is harmless, but it has anchored itself to your magical signature." Harry watched the flickering swirl. For a moment, it felt as though the chamber dimmed, and the sphere became a window into a deep and distant murmur of magic. Old, patient, waiting. Not a warning, not a prophecy, simply an echo of choice, forged at the moment he pulled Kaelin back from disaster. "It won't affect you," the unspeakable assured him. "But in case the resonance persists, we thought it best that you be aware." Harry stepped back. "Thank you. I appreciate the warning." As he turned to leave, the sphere pulsed once more, a soft, warm shimmer, like a whisper of gratitude or farewell. Then it dimmed to a quiet glow. Harry exited the department with thoughts stirring like leaves caught in a restless wind. The echo was harmless, they said, nothing more than a reflection. Yet it tugged at him still, a reminder of how closely fear had shadowed Kaelin's steps, and how easily magic could bend beneath the weight of human intention. When Harry returned to the Auror office, Ron looked up from a mountain of parchment. So, what did the unspeakables want? Harry shook his head slowly. "It's nothing dangerous, just a remnant, something left behind." Ron snorted. "Figures. Magic always leaves crumbs behind for someone else to sweep." Maris approached with a new report. "Sir, we've interviewed Kaelin again. He's calmer now. He asked if you might speak with him once more." Harry's expression softened. "Yes, I'll go." He made his way to the secure ward again, where the quiet was thicker than before, as if the air itself wished to tread lightly. Kaelin sat in the same place, though his posture was straighter, his expression clearer. When he saw Harry, he rose. "You came." Harry nodded. "Maris said you wanted to see me." Kaelin hesitated. "I wish to apologize once more, not for my intentions, but for my blindness. I thought I could outrun fate by grasping at scraps of old magic, but I see now that I was trying to replace something I lost, not something that threatened us." Harry listened in silence. Kaelin continued. "The echoes I saw, the patterns I believed in, they were shadows of my own fear. You showed me that." Harry placed a hand gently against the cold stone wall. "Fear is powerful, but it doesn't have to bind you." Kaelin swallowed. "Will they ever trust me again?" Harry met his eyes. "Trust can be rebuilt, slowly, but your choices from here will shape the path ahead." Kaelin bowed his head. "Then I will begin again." Harry stepped back, offering a faint, encouraging smile. When he left the ward, the corridor felt brighter somehow, as though a long shadow had finally begun to lift. Ron caught up with him halfway down the hall. "How'd it go?" "He's finding his footing," Harry said, "a step at a time." Ron nodded. "Good. Everyone deserves a second chance." As they walked, Harry sensed the quiet magic of the world stirring softly around them. Not prophecy, not foreboding, but the gentle hum of life continuing. A reminder that even among shadows, light endured. And though the tale was far from its final lines, for now the world seemed steady, upheld by choices rather than fear. Another day awaited, another chapter turning with the calm certainty of dawn. Spring sunlight filtered softly through the enchanted windows of the ministry, warm and golden as if attempting to lift the lingering tension that had hovered since Kaelin's misguided ritual. Days had passed, and though calm had returned to the corridors, Harry sensed, quietly but unmistakably, that the wizarding world was only just beginning to settle its breath again. And still, the faint echo left from the Undercroft lived within his thoughts. Not a prophecy, not a warning, just a whisper of choice shaped by the magic that had burst free at the moment he and Kaelin broke the ritual. Yet the unspeakable sphere had stirred something in Harry, as though reminding him that even the smallest resonance could ripple outward if left unheard. On this particular morning, the Auror office bustled with renewed purpose. A stack of sealed reports awaited Harry on his desk, and Ron sat beside him, toying with a quill and muttering about the unfairness of paperwork that multiplied overnight. Maris hurried from desk to desk, preparing notes for a briefing on magical safety protocols. Just as Harry took his seat, an owl swooped in through the high window, its feathers dusted with early blossoms. It landed gracefully upon his desk, offering a small parchment sealed with the crest of St. Mungo's. Ron raised an eyebrow. "Expecting any hospital news?" Harry shook his head. "No." He broke the seal. The letter was brief. Caelan Thorne has requested transfer to the Mental and Emotional Renewal Wing for voluntary treatment. Further, he has asked permission to speak with you once more, when you are able. Ron leaned in. "He wants to see you again." "What for?" Harry folded the parchment thoughtfully. "I'm not sure, but I think I should go." Ron's gaze softened. "Reckon he trusts you." Harry smiled faintly. "Or he feels he owes me answers." Maris approached, holding a thin sheaf of documents. "Sir, these are the final analyses of the Undercroft fragments. The runes are dormant now, no remaining threat." Harry lowered his voice. "And the echoes?" Maris hesitated. "Still faintly detectable, but stable." Harry nodded. That was enough. He left shortly thereafter, making his way through the bustling atrium and emerging into the brisk spring air. St. Mungo's rose tall against the cityscape, its windows reflecting clouds drifting lazily above. The doorways shimmered as charms recognized him, opening with a muted hum. Inside, the hospital carried its usual fragrance of potions, healing herbs, and quiet hope. A healer guided him through several wards until they reached a tranquil room adorned with pale stone and soft, enchanted lanterns. Caelan sat upon a bench beside the window, gazing down at the busy street below. When he turned at Harry's approach, his expression held a calmness that had not been present before, fragile still, but real. "Harry," he greeted softly. Harry stepped closer. "You asked to see me." Caelan nodded. "I did. There is something I needed to say." He paused, searching for the right words. When the ritual collapsed, I felt something, besides fear, a sense that the magic itself was relieved, that it wanted to break free from my grasp. Harry listened quietly. Caelan continued. "I realized then that I had been trying to force the world to give me certainty, but certainty cannot be taken, and prophecy cannot be demanded." "No," Harry said gently. "It can't." Caelan exhaled. "I used to believe prophecy was a path laid before us. Now I see it as only a distant whisper, small, easily misunderstood. I wanted to tell you that I am choosing a different path now, one of healing, not for the world, for myself." Harry felt a warmth stir within him. "That's a good choice, Caelan. A strong one." Caelan smiled faintly. "I also wanted to ask, do you ever feel the echoes of your own battles? Not magical echoes, but memories that refuse to quiet?" Harry thought for a moment. Images rose. The halls of Hogwarts, lit by wand light and fear, the roar of battle, the weight of choices made long ago. And yet, mixed within them were faces of hope, friends, family, new beginnings. "Yes," Harry admitted. "I feel them, but they don't guide me. They simply remind me of where I've come from." Caelan nodded, absorbing the words. A healer stepped inside briefly, checking a series of softly glowing runes above the door, then departed with a respectful bow. Silence settled in their wake. Finally, Kalen spoke again, his voice low. "There is something else. A memory. No, a vision. Touched me during the ritual's collapse. Not of prophecy, but of peace. A feeling that the world is steadier than my fears allowed me to believe." His gaze steadied. "I think that came from you." Harry blinked, surprised. "From me? You believed the future could be shaped by hope rather than fear." That belief filled the chamber. I felt it. It broke the spell as surely as your wand did. Harry absorbed this quietly. He had not considered that emotion could resonate through collapsing magic, weaving itself into the remnants that Kalen and the unspeakables had sensed. But perhaps the world responded not only to spells, but to the hearts of those who cast them. Kalen looked toward the window again. "I just wanted to thank you for giving me a chance to see differently." Harry stood, placing a hand on Kalen's shoulder. "You're doing the work. I only stopped you from losing yourself." Kalen nodded, gratitude lighting his eyes. Harry left St. Mungo's with the quiet certainty that Kalen's path had shifted. Not easily, not quickly, but truly. And as he stepped into the sunlight, he felt lighter as well, as though the echo he carried now hummed with steadiness rather than uncertainty. Back at the ministry, Ron awaited him with 2 steaming cups of tea and a grin. "So, how's our prophecy-chasing friend?" Harry accepted the tea, healing and seeing clearer than before. "Good," Ron said, settling into his chair. "We all need a bit of that now and then." Maris approached with fresh parchment. "Sir, the minister has scheduled a review meeting tomorrow morning. She wants your full account of the case, every detail." Ron groaned. "That'll be fun." Harry chuckled. "We'll manage." As the office settled into its afternoon rhythm, Harry glanced at the enchanted window. Clouds drifted lazily across a soft blue sky, and sunlight spilled onto the floor in warm golden pools. Peace was a fragile thing, always shifting, always fleeting. But in that moment, it rested gently across the wizarding world, like a blessing offered by hands unseen. Harry took a slow breath. The echoes were quiet now. The fear that had driven Kalen had loosened its grip, and though the world would always hold shadows, they seemed, for now, more distant than before. Another page had turned, and the tale continued, steady as the flow of spring light across the ministry's old stone walls. Morning rose pale and cool, brushing the windows of the Auror office with a quiet sheen of light. Outside, London stirred awake, but within the ministry, a deeper stillness lingered, one of anticipation rather than unease. Today, the minister had summoned Harry to present the full account of Kalen's case, a task that felt less like offering a report and more like closing a fragile chapter whose echoes still whispered through the halls. Harry had slept little the night before, not from worry, but from reflection. The Undercroft's collapsing magic, Kalen's trembling resolve, the sphere's quiet pulse within the Department of Mysteries. Each image moved through his thoughts like drifting lanterns on a midnight stream. These were not warnings or burdens, merely moments that shaped the course of the days to come. Ron was already seated at his desk when Harry arrived, wrestling with a pile of parchment and muttering darkly about quills that dulled faster than a Cornish pixie's patience. "There you are," Ron said, looking up. "Minister's expecting you. Try not to terrify her with too many details. You know how she gets around anything involving ancient magic." Harry smiled faintly. "I'll try my best." Maris approached with a small stack of neatly bound documents. "Sir, these are the finalized summaries you requested. every rune, every magical trace, every witness testimony. If the minister asks, we have full documentation. Harry accepted the files. Thank you, Maris. You've done excellent work. She flushed with quiet pride and stepped aside as Harry made his way through the bustling corridors. The minister's conference chamber was brighter than most rooms in the ministry, lit by tall windows and enchanted torches that flickered like steady golden stars. A long table dominated the center, lined with officials, advisors, and representatives from the Department of Mysteries. Their eyes turned to Harry as he entered, not with suspicion, but with solemn expectation. The minister inclined her head. Auror Potter, please begin. Harry set the documents before him and spoke. His voice carried the clarity of truth, steady, yet imbued with the weight of recent days. He recounted Kaelin's attacks, not harmful, but unsettling, each carefully executed to gather magical signatures. He described the coins etched with ancient crescents, the trail leading into Nocturne Alley, and the discovery beneath the city's old stones. As he spoke of the ritual in the Undercroft, the trembling runes, the collapsing circle, the moment he reached for Kaelin, silence filled the chamber, deep and unbroken. When he finished, the minister let out a long breath. You prevented a disaster, Harry, and you turned a misguided young wizard away from the brink. One of the unspeakables leaned forward. Your actions also stabilized the magical rift. The echoes we detected have begun to fade. What remains is harmless, perhaps even instructive. Another murmured, a reminder that magic reacts not only to spell work, but to intention. Harry inclined his head at this. He felt that truth as plainly as the floor beneath his boots. The minister closed the file before her. This case is resolved. Kaelin Thorne will receive treatment, not punishment. His restrictions will remain, but our hope is that one day he may return to service in some capacity. Harry felt a quiet relief settle through him. Kaelin deserved a chance to rebuild. As the meeting dismissed, one advisor approached Harry privately. You carry the scars of prophecy more than most, yet you face it with remarkable steadiness. Harry answered softly, because I learned long ago that prophecy does not own me. My choices do. The advisor bowed respectfully and departed. When Harry returned to the Auror office, Ron was leaning back in his chair, balancing a quill across his nose, while Maris tried very hard not to laugh. Ron straightened at once. Well, did they give you a medal? A statue? Your own special office with windows that actually open? No medals, Harry replied, amused. But the case is formally closed. Maris grinned. Good. The whole office has been tense. Even the filing cabinets were rattling on their own. Ron chuckled. Probably just a mouse. Harry set the documents aside. I'll check on Kaelin again in a few days, but for now, we resume normal work. At that moment, as if in defiance of the word normal, a jet-black owl swooped through the high window, its wings beating with determined urgency. It circled once and landed upon Harry's desk, offering a sealed parchment stamped with the crest of Hogwarts. Ron blinked. Hogwarts? What's happened now? Harry opened the letter. His eyes moved across the lines, and a faint smile warmed his expression. It's from Professor McGonagall. She wants me to visit next weekend. There's a lesson she thinks the older students should hear from someone who's lived it. Ron peered over his shoulder. What lesson? Harry folded the letter gently. That fear can twist even noble intentions, and that choosing hope is never naive. Ron leaned back, satisfied. Well, you're the right man for that. The rest of the day unfolded with the ordinary rhythm of Auror duties, interviews, reports, minor investigations. Yet beneath the simplicity of these tasks, Harry felt a renewed steadiness in his stride. The world was never without shadows, but light stirred easily when hearts chose to kindle it. When evening settled, spreading its dusky hues across the city, Harry walked home along the familiar path leading to Grimmauld Place. Lanterns glowed like floating embers, casting gentle shapes upon the cobblestones. The sky above held a dim wash of stars, barely visible through the city's haze, yet steadfast. As he reached the doorstep, Harry paused, sensing that faint magical echo again, not ominous, not stirring trouble, simply humming like a lingering note of music, a reminder of the Undercroft, of choices made in a moment of chaos, and of how even the smallest fragment of intention could shape the magic around him. He entered the quiet house, its warmth wrapping around him like a cloak, and for the first time in days, he felt the tension ease completely from his shoulders. The tale was shifting once more, flowing into calmer waters. Yet Harry knew well that stories seldom ended where peace began. They stretched onward, weaving through the lives of those who dared to step into their light. And though he could not yet see the next chapter, he felt no worry, for he had seen what fear could create, and he had seen how hope could mend it. A quiet weekend morning found Harry standing before the familiar gates of Hogwarts, the castle rising in the soft embrace of dawn. Mist curled along the grass, drifting like tired spirits returning to their beds, while the turrets glowed faintly with the first touch of sunlight. Harry felt a stirring in his chest, a gentle warmth, half nostalgia, half reverence, for no place held more stories in its stones than this ancient school. The gates opened soundlessly at his approach, as though welcoming him home. Students were already beginning to spill across the grounds, their cloaks fluttering, their laughter rising like birdsong upon the cool spring breeze. Harry walked the path toward the castle, absorbing the familiar rhythm of youthful excitement, hopeful chatter, and the faint scent of parchment drifting from the windows. Awaiting him on the steps was Professor McGonagall, her posture as straight as a wand, her expression stern yet softened by the smallest glimmer of pride. "Harry," she greeted, hands clasped neatly before her, "you're punctual as always." "And you look exactly as I remember," Harry replied with a grin. Her lips twitched. "Flattery will not earn you points, Mr. Potter. You aren't a student any longer." Inside the castle, warm torchlight flickered along the ancient stone corridors. Portraits whispered to one another as Harry passed, offering greetings or soft murmurs of recognition. The magic here felt deep, steady, older than fear, older than war, older even than the legends woven through its long history. McGonagall guided him toward her office. Several students in the upper years expressed concern after hearing rumors of the incident beneath London. Children have vivid imaginations, and stories grow quickly within these walls. I believe your voice might steady them, and perhaps offer some wisdom they can carry forward. Harry nodded, understanding fully. For many young witches and wizards, the notion of dark rituals and collapsing magic stirred old anxieties, echoes of conflicts they had been too young to understand. When they reached the office, Harry found several seventh-year students waiting in a semicircle of chairs. Their faces brightened as he entered, though a few exchanged nervous glances. These were not children anymore, but young adults preparing to step into a world that held both wonder and weight. McGonagall motioned to the front. "I shall leave you to it," she said quietly. Harry took his place before the students. The room settled into attentive stillness. "I know many of you have heard fragments of what happened beneath London," he began. "Some of it true, some of it twisted into tales more suited for bedtime frights. But the important part is this: magic did not fail, people did. A young witch raised her hand timidly. "Professor, Mr. Potter, was it really a prophecy? A true one?" Harry shook his head. No, it was the fear of a prophecy, a shadow someone thought they saw. But shadows aren't truths. They only seem solid when you stand too far away to understand them. Another student leaned forward. But why would someone risk so much? Why believe in something uncertain? Harry met their gaze gently. Because fear is clever. It whispers in the quiet, telling you that danger lurks in what you cannot see. It convinces you that if you could just know the future, you could guard against every loss. The students absorbed this, the flicker of torchlight reflecting in their thoughtful eyes. Harry continued, "The man who cast the ritual wasn't a villain, just frightened. He tried to force magic to give him certainty, and magic doesn't bend to fear. It bends to purpose, to intention, to choice." A hush fell over the room, warm and contemplative. Harry's voice softened. "When I was your age, I thought prophecy shaped my life, that it was a chain I couldn't break. But I learned that prophecy is only a possibility, never a destiny. What truly shapes your future are the choices you make each day. Your courage, your kindness, your hope." One student whispered, almost to themselves, "Hope feels small sometimes." "Small things hold great power," Harry replied. "Even a whisper of hope can steady someone standing too close to the dark." For a moment, silence settled like soft snowfall. Then the tension eased, replaced by a quiet sense of understanding that filled the room like gentle light. After the gathering ended, several students approached Harry privately, asking small questions, sharing quiet fears. He listened to each with patience, offering calm words that came not from textbooks, but from lived truth. When the last had gone, Harry stepped onto the balcony overlooking the lake. The surface shimmered with morning gold, disturbed only by the lazy ripple of the giant squid's tentacle drifting beneath. The wind carried soft whispers of laughter from distant courtyards. McGonagall joined him. "They will remember what you said," she murmured. Harry watched the light dance across the water. "I hope it helps." "It will," she said simply. "Your experience carries weight, and your humility even more." They stood together for a time, two figures bound by the history of a place that had shaped them both. The castle rested in quiet dignity beneath the rising sun, as though content to watch its students and former champions walk paths guided by choices rather than fate. After lunch in the great hall, where Harry was met with more stares of awe than he cared to count, he wandered through the grounds. He visited Hagrid, who embraced him with bone-crushing enthusiasm. He paused at the edge of the forest, inhaling the cool, earthy air. And he stood once more at the courtyard, where so many memories of friendship and battle intertwined. Later that afternoon, Harry returned to the ministry. The Auror office bustled with ordinary tasks, comforting in their simplicity. Yet when he stepped inside, Ron looked up from his desk with raised brows. "Back already? Thought Hogwarts might keep you for tea, dinner, and a spot of nostalgic wandering." Harry chuckled. "They tried." "Did you terrify the students or inspire them?" "I'm not sure," Harry admitted. "Maybe both." Ron grinned. "Best combination." As they laughed, the enchanted lanterns brightened, signaling the close of another day. Harry felt a calmness settle deep within him, a steadiness born not of certainty, but of acceptance. Kaelin's fears, the collapsing Undercroft, the lingering echo of intention, each had left its mark, but none held power over the days ahead. They were reminders only, echoes fading like footprints washed gently by rain. When Harry stepped back into the evening air, he glanced once more toward the distant horizon. The sky glowed with shades of rose and amber, stretching out like a promise unfurling slowly across the world. Whatever tomorrow held, he would meet it not with fear, but with the quiet courage of one who understood the strength of choice, and the tale, ever turning, carried him onward like a river eager to meet the sea. The weeks that followed unfolded with a gentle steadiness, like pages of a book turning beneath a calm hand. Spring deepened into fuller warmth, and the wizarding world, though ever watchful, seemed to breathe easier. Yet for Harry, a subtle tug of awareness lingered, a quiet intuition that the echoes stirred by Kalen's ritual had not faded entirely. They did not threaten, nor did they whisper danger, but they hovered in the edge of thought like distant bells whose chime could only barely be heard. Still, work resumed its usual tempo. One evening, as the sun cast long amber shafts through the windows of the Auror office, Harry gathered his cloak. Most desks were empty now, save for Ron's, where parchment lay strewn like fallen leaves. Ron rubbed his temples, muttering something about a charm that refused to be categorized as either defensive or decorative. "You're leaving early," Ron observed as Harry approached. "It's hardly early," Harry said, glancing at the hour. "But yes, I promised Hermione I'd stop by. She wanted my thoughts on a new policy about magical artifact classification." Ron groaned. "You poor soul." Harry smiled, shook his head, and made his way out. The ministry was quieter at twilight, its corridors filled with muted torchlight and the soft echoes of retreating footsteps. Harry walked the familiar path toward the main atrium, but as he neared the great fountain, something pulled him to a halt. A faint shimmer lingered in the air, not visual, more a sensation, a subtle pressure like the memory of a spell brushing against his senses. Harry closed his eyes, listening inwardly. The echo. It reached for him again, gentle, faint, but unmistakably present. Not a warning, a calling. He opened his eyes and scanned the area. Nothing unusual met his gaze, only the gleaming floor, the tall columns, the fountain's quiet murmur. But the pull remained, urging him not forward, but sideways, toward a corridor seldom used except by the oldest ministry staff. Trusting instinct, he followed. The corridor was narrow, lined with portraits so faded their subjects were little more than silhouettes. At its end rested a door, plain and wooden, worn by time. Harry hesitated. He had never noticed this door before, though he had passed through this part of the ministry countless times. As he reached for the handle, the echo pulsed gently once more, like a steady heartbeat guiding his hand. The door creaked open. Within lay a small, dusty chamber, lit by a single floating orb of blue light. Shelves lined the walls, filled with scrolls bound in fraying twine, ancient books with cracked spines, and glass jars whose contents had long since dulled into obscurity. At first glance, the place resembled a forgotten storage room, but the air held a hum, a quiet, old magic, subdued but alive. Harry stepped inside. The door shut softly behind him. A book rested upon a pedestal at the center of the chamber. Its cover was plain leather, worn smooth by centuries of handling. No title adorned it. Yet the echo pulsed faintly from within, a resonance that seemed to beckon Harry closer. He approached with care. As his hand brushed the cover, the book stirred gently, as though breathing. The hum of magic deepened, curling like warm mist around his fingers. Without force, without danger, the book opened. Inside lay a single page. No words, only runes, ancient crescents interwoven with spirals, unmistakably similar to those Kalen had carved into his ritual circle. Yet these were calm, orderly, woven with purpose rather than desperation. Harry frowned, tracing the symbols with his eyes. They formed a pattern of intention, one not meant to summon or reveal prophecy, but to steady the mind, to anchor the heart, a ritual of clarity, a reminder that old magic did not exist solely for war or prophecy, but also for grounding those who walked near the edge of shadow. A soft voice broke the quiet. "I wondered if you might find your way here." Harry turned sharply. An elderly wizard stood in the doorway, his robes deep blue, his eyes gentle with the calm assurance of long years spent in contemplation. Harry recognized him. Master Auror, a reclusive archivist who worked deep within the ministry's oldest magical collection. Few saw him, fewer spoke with him. "You felt it too?" Harry asked. Auror stepped inside, closing the door behind him. "Not I, you. The echo did not bind itself to you by accident. It responded to your intention in the Undercroft, your decision to mend rather than sever, to reach rather than strike." Harry looked back at the runes. "What is this place?" "A sanctuary," Auror said. "Long forgotten by most. It was once used by wizards who safeguarded magic not by force, but by understanding. Those who believed that the greatest power lies not in spells cast outward, but in the heart's quiet resolve." He gestured to the runes upon the page. These symbols were distorted by time. Some who found fragments misunderstood their purpose, shaping fear from what was meant to offer peace. Harry understood at once. "Kalen," he murmured. Auror nodded gently. He found echoes of this ritual scattered across old texts, but without guidance, he mistook their meaning. He saw defense where there was clarity, prophecy where there was reflection. Harry exhaled slowly, absorbing the truth. "Why show me this?" he asked. Auror stepped beside the pedestal. "Because the echo chose you, and echoes seek completion, not through action, but comprehension." Harry studied the runes again. Their lines no longer reminded him of collapsing circles or trembling stones. They felt calm, steady, a reminder that magic did not always roar with fire and fear. Sometimes it whispered of stillness, of inner balance. Auror spoke softly. "You carry many memories, many burdens, yet you do not allow them to rule you." That steadiness shaped the echo, and it led you here to remind you that even old magic can be gentle. Harry closed the book gently. The hum softened, settling into a warm, steady pulse. "What should I do with it?" he asked. "Nothing," Auror said with a kind smile. "Knowledge does not always demand action. Sometimes it only asks to be understood." He walked toward the door. "Come. The world waits for you, and it is not weighed with prophecy today." Harry cast one last glance at the book before following him out. As the door closed, the chamber grew quiet once more. But the echo within Harry faded into something softer than before. Not a pull, not a warning, a quiet harmony. Outside, Ron hurried toward him, waving a parchment wildly. "There you are. I've been looking everywhere. Filibuster fireworks exploded in the paperwork room, and now everything smells like burnt cinnamon." Harry laughed, the echo settling like warm dawn within him. "I'm coming," he said. And as he walked beside his friend, the old magic's whisper followed, not as prophecy but as peace, weaving gently into the new chapter yet to unfold. The days that followed passed with the soft rhythm of ordinary life, if such a thing could ever be said of an Auror's work. Spring matured into lush greenery outside the ministry's enchanted windows, and London's magical quarter thrummed with renewed energy. Yet Harry carried within him the quiet resonance of the old sanctuary, its calming presence lingering like a gentle lantern glow in the back of his thoughts. He did not speak of the chamber to anyone, not out of secrecy, but because he sensed it was a place meant to be found only by those called to it. And for now, its purpose had been fulfilled. The echo that had once tugged insistently upon him had softened into a steady warmth, a companion rather than a summons. But tranquility, as Harry had long learned, was a living thing, never fragile, but always in motion. One mild afternoon, the Auror office found itself soaked in golden sunlight as Harry sorted through a stack of case files. Ron sprawled in his chair nearby, boots on his desk despite Maris's repeated protests, while she attempted to charm an unruly filing cabinet into alphabetical obedience. "Stubborn great beast," she muttered as the cabinet rattled irritably. "Honestly, who enchants office furniture with personality charms?" Ron raised a hand. "Guilty." She glared at him. "You did what?" "It was a slow week," Ron said defensively, "and it was just supposed to hum when it was full." Maris's sigh could have chilled fire. Before Harry could intervene, a sharp tapping struck the glass of the enchanted window. A ministry owl hovered outside, wings fluttering against the breeze. Harry opened the latch, and the owl swooped inside, landing upon his desk with official urgency. The seal upon the parchment bore the insignia of the Department of Mysteries. Ron groaned. "Not again. Don't tell me the echoes have started whistling." Harry broke the seal, scanning the message. "They've requested my presence. Immediately." Maris's expression tightened. "Did something happen?" Harry read further. "They found something new." The three exchanged uneasy glances. Whatever the Department of Mysteries found rarely fell into simple categories. Harry departed at once. The descent into the restricted wing felt different this time. Less shadowed, less burdened. The gentle steadiness he carried from the sanctuary seemed to cushion his steps, turning old dim corridors into spaces of quiet readiness rather than foreboding. The unspeakables awaited him in a circular chamber filled with floating crystalline constructs, each glowing with soft, shifting colors. The lead unspeakable, hood drawn, voice calm as water, motioned him forward. "Auror Potter, thank you for coming so swiftly." "What have you found?" Harry asked. The unspeakable gestured toward a hovering crystal filled with swirling strands of pale silver light. "This is a trace extracted from the final collapse of Caelan Thorne's ritual circle. We believed we had cataloged all remnants, yet one fragment remained dormant until recently." Harry studied the sphere. "Dormant?" "Yes. It awakened 3 days ago. Very faint, but undeniably active. We examined it closely and discovered something curious. With a wave of the unspeakable's hand, the sphere magnified, its swirling threads parting to reveal a single point of light, pulsing softly like a heartbeat. "This," the unspeakable continued, "is not a prophecy, nor a magical signature. It is a reflection." Harry frowned. "A reflection of what?" "Of intent, but not Thorne's. Yours." A soft hush settled over the chamber. The unspeakable turned to Harry. "During the ritual's collapse, your magic countered his in such a way that it imprinted upon the surrounding field. This fragment recorded the exact emotional state you projected in that moment." Harry blinked. "Emotion?" "Compassion," the unspeakable said simply. "And steadiness. You reached out not to defeat a threat, but to save a life. The echo resonated with that purpose. And recently, only recently, it responded to a similar moment occurring elsewhere in the ministry. Harry straightened. What moment? A second crystal floated forward. Within its depths, faint images flickered. Not clear scenes, but impressions. The flare of a defensive spell, the crackle of stress, and the unmistakable threat of fear that was quickly soothed by an unseen presence. That happened this morning, the unspeakable explained. A trainee accidentally triggered a hazardous artifact. The spell destabilized and a surge of magic nearly injured her. But something intervened. Something calmed the artifact. Something stabilized the magic. Harry stared. You're saying the echo did this? We believe so, the unspeakable replied. Not consciously, not as a force of action, but as a resonance. Your intention at the Undercroft was woven into that echo, and when faced with uncertainty, the magic settled into the nearest emotional pattern it recognized. Mine, Harry whispered. Yes. The fragment is small, harmless, but it carries a signature of steadying intent. In rare circumstances, it may help balance unstable magic, not by power, but by echo. Harry absorbed this, wonder mingling with quiet astonishment. So, what does this mean? He asked. The unspeakable folded their hands. Only this. Magic remembers what we imprint upon it, much like the castle at Hogwarts, which holds the intentions of those who walked its halls. You need not fear this echo. It is not a burden. It is a gift that sprang from your choice to guide rather than destroy. Harry let the words settle. A gift. In all his years, magic had surprised him countless times, but seldom with gentleness. The unspeakable added, We felt you should know, so that if you encounter similar occurrences, you will understand their nature. But do not seek to control it. Echoes fade on their own, and forcing them would distort their purpose. I understand, Harry said. Before he left, he paused at the chamber door. Did Kalen's ritual ever have the power to foresee darkness? Or was that always a misconception? A misconception, the unspeakable replied. No ritual can reveal what does not exist. His fear shaped his interpretation, not the magic. Harry nodded, gratitude easing the last remnants of tension from his shoulders. When he returned to the Auror office, Ron leapt up at once. Well, did they say the world was ending? Should I hide the ink pots? Harry laughed. Nothing like that? Maris peered at him. Then what was it? Harry took a seat, warmth in his voice. Magic left something behind. Not dangerous, something gentle. Ron blinked. Magic? Gentle? Are you sure? Harry smiled. Quite sure. The office resumed its bustling pace, but the air around Harry felt lighter somehow, not with triumph, but with quiet affirmation. He knew now that the echo within him was not a shadow of fear, nor a relic of old magic distorted. It was a reflection of his choice, a reminder that intention shaped not only spells, but the very fabric of magic's memory. As twilight fell outside the ministry windows, Harry looked out across the city, its rooftops bathed in rose-gold light. Peace lingered, not because the world had no shadows, but because he carried within himself a steady flame that no darkness could easily dim. And the story, whispered onward by unseen threads, continued to unfold with gentle purpose. Twilight gathered gently over London, laying its soft violet hues across rooftops and chimneys, as though the evening itself wished to hush the world into quiet reflection. In the Auror office, lanterns glowed with mellow warmth, casting long shadows over desks cluttered with parchment and ink pots. The air hummed with the last breaths of a fading workday, and Harry lingered at his desk, reluctant to break the peaceful rhythm that had settled since the echoes of Kalen's misguided ritual had dissolved into stillness. Outside, the enchanted windows shimmered with the reflection of the coming night, the sky streaked with hues reminiscent of the Undercroft's dim glow, yet now free of fear, touched only by memory. Harry leaned back, fingertips resting lightly upon the polished surface of his wand. He felt the faint warmth that had lived there ever since the ritual collapsed, an echo of intent that pulsed with gentle steadiness. A reminder, not of danger, but of quiet resolution. Ron wandered over, clutching a handful of parchment. "You know, I almost miss the chaos," he said with a dramatic sigh. "Every time things go calm, I start expecting the floor to swallow someone or a Dementor to stroll in asking for tea." Harry smiled. "Enjoy the calm, Ron. It doesn't visit often." Maris approached, tucking stray strands of hair behind her ear. "Sir, the department just sent final clearance forms on the Thorn case. All magical residues have faded. There's nothing left but harmless traces." Harry nodded. "Good. And Kalen?" "Visited by his sister today." Maris replied softly. "The healers say he's made remarkable progress. They believe he'll stabilize fully in time." Harry felt a subtle warmth unfurl in his chest. Kalen had walked precariously close to the edge, not of darkness, but of fear, a place that twisted the heart until it mistook shadows for truth. That he now walked toward healing felt like a quiet victory, not only for him, but for the world that often forgot how fragile hope could be. As Maris stepped away, Ron nudged Harry's arm. "You did right by him, you know." Harry shook his head gently. He did right by himself. He just needed someone to steady the path. Before Ron could reply, a sharp chime echoed from the far corner of the room. A silver messenger orb shot through the air, swirling with sparks of blue and white. It hovered before Harry, then unfurled into a soft projection of the minister's voice. "Auror Potter, a matter requires your attention in the Hall of Records. No urgency, simply a request before you leave for the evening." Ron groaned. "Hall of Records? That place smells like ancient socks." Harry rose, gathering his cloak. "I won't be long." He made his way down the winding corridors of the ministry, where torchlight flickered with gentle constancy and portraits watched with quiet curiosity. The Hall of Records lay deep in the north wing, a vast chamber lined with towering shelves that curled like ancient trees. Its ceiling vanished into shadow, dust motes drifting like tiny constellations. The caretaker, a hunched, soft-spoken wizard named Alder, approached with a respectful bow. "Auror Potter, thank you for coming. We uncovered a misplaced artifact during inventory inspection. Given its nature, we thought it best you examine it." Harry raised a brow. "Misplaced?" Alder nodded and led him to a small wooden table near the back of the hall. Upon it rested a smooth, rune-carved stone, no larger than a child's palm. Its markings glimmered faintly with crescent-shaped etchings, echoes of the same ancient symbols Kalen had once misinterpreted. Harry's expression sharpened. "Where did you find this?" "It slipped behind a shelf decades ago, it seems," Alder replied. "But we noticed something unusual today. When touched, it emits a warmth, gentle, steady, almost like a charm of clarity." Harry reached out. As his fingertips brushed the stone, a faint warmth blossomed beneath his touch. Not the wild hum of unstable magic, but the same quiet steadiness he had felt in the hidden sanctuary weeks earlier. The runes lit softly, responding not to power, but to calm intention. Alder watched with fascination. "Do you recognize it?" Harry nodded slowly. "It's part of an old grounding ritual, Not dangerous, not prophetic. Its purpose is to center the mind, a relic of a gentler form of magic. Alder sighed in relief. Then we shall preserve it properly. Harry placed the stone back upon the table, the runes dimming into peaceful silence. Store it with the other ancient meditative artifacts. It doesn't belong to fear. It belongs to those seeking balance. As Harry turned to leave, Alder spoke again. It suits you, you know. These artifacts often respond to the one whose intentions reflect their purpose. Harry paused. Perhaps. Or perhaps they simply remind us of what we already know. The walk back through the ministry felt slower, touched by quiet introspection. Harry had seen too much in his life to believe in coincidences, yet he did not sense ominous design here. Only an echo, a reflection of what Kaelin's ritual had stirred, of what Harry's own choices had shaped. Ron was waiting near the atrium when Harry returned. So? Ron asked. Was it cursed? Did it try to bite you? Burst into flames? Harry shook his head, amused. Just an old stone, prompted by the same magic we encountered before. Ron clapped him on the shoulder. Figures. Even rocks like you, mate. Harry rolled his eyes. Let's go home. They stepped out into the crisp evening air. Lanterns glowed above the streets like suspended stars, and the wind carried the soft murmur of the city settling into night. Harry inhaled deeply, the crisp scent mingling with the warm hum of magic woven through the air. As they walked toward the apparition point, Harry glanced upward. The sky spread wide and luminous, twilight melting into a canopy of gathering stars. The world felt steady again, not unshaken, but balanced, held firm by threads of human intention stronger than any wavering prophecy. Kaelin's fear had not heralded a coming storm. It had instead revealed something quieter, more enduring. That hope, when chosen, could ripple as surely through magic as fear ever could. Harry touched his wand lightly, feeling the faint, steady echo within it, a reflection of a moment when he chose compassion over conflict, a reminder that magic, like people, remembered kindness. As Ron rambled on about dinner and Maris's ongoing war with the filing cabinet, Harry allowed himself a quiet smile. The path ahead held its mysteries, as all paths did, but he would walk it with steady steps, guided not by prophecy, but by the simple certainty that hearts could choose their own course. The night deepened around them, and the story, gentle and resolute, slipped into its final arc, guided by echoes of peace born from courage and by the unwavering flame that lived quietly within him.